Hi, it's Ashley. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Boozy Bookshelf, the podcast where I relive my favorite childhood books with an adult eye and an impaired mind. This week I'm joined once again by my lovely roommate Crystal. We read chapter 4 and 5 of The Vampire Academy by Richelle Mead. Is it good? Okay, it's going. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. How was your day today?
My day was pretty nice. I found out that if I take an alternate route to the bar I frequent, that there's at least 22 cats. I saw one and I was like, oh my goodness, there's one cat. Then there were two, and I was just out loud being like, there's 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, there's 4. And then somebody peeks out from behind their car and they were like, I have 22 of them. In other words, I had a great day.
I was really surprised that you didn't come home with a cat when you were telling me about that. What are you drinking?
I am drinking. How do you pronounce it?
I think I got you Pinot Grigio, and I have Chardonnay, which is one of my least favorite things. I don't like white wine. They didn't have red wine at CVS, so we're making do.
It sounds like we need to start going somewhere other than CVS.
Yeah, honestly. How did you feel about chapter 4? Do you have any immediate thoughts before we get into it?
I feel like they amped it up real fast. A lot happened in this chapter, but it doesn't feel like it was too much information. It gave us more information.
Yeah, I feel like we got a lot of lore and background in this chapter. I don't think a lot happened, but I do think that we learned a lot. So let's talk about that. In chapter 4, Rose gets into a verbal altercation with Erin's new girlfriend and threatens her, revealing that she broke a girl's arm in the 9th grade. Apparently, Rose has a reputation at school for kicking ass. A staff member walks by and Erin leads his girlfriend away, and then the girls go to see the feeders, and Rose gets a small pang of jealousy. She also describes the feeders as junkies looking for their next fix and feels disgusted by them. She reveals that they are human addicts that give their life over to the Moroi for the high of the vampire bite. Lissa tells Rose that there has been a lot of students staring and whispering. She also reveals that she is in a sophomore magic class because she hasn't specialized yet. Finally, we get some more information about what differentiates Moroi from Strigoi. Strigoi are described as dead vampires with no magic. Moroi possess elemental magic that connects them to the earth. Most students will specialize in either earth, water, fire, or air. We find out that Lissa has not specialized yet. Rose asks Lissa if she told her teacher about something, and Lissa quickly shuts it down, but they don't reveal what it is that they're talking about. The girls sit with Natalie at lunch, and she talks a lot. Natalie asks Lissa what she did for blood while she was away, and Rose makes up a story about a lot of humans wanting to be bitten. Natalie also reveals that Erin's new girlfriend is named Mia Rinaldi, and then Jesse appears. Rose describes Jesse as so hot that he's practically flammable and flirts with him a bit before he walks away. And then Rose can feel sadness coming from Lissa all afternoon and tries to hatch a plan to escape again, but Lissa says that they should stay. Lissa says that she hasn't felt anyone following her yet, which left me hoping for an explanation as to why they're so afraid to stay at school. Rose explains that their teacher, Mrs. Karp, had always thought that she was being followed as well. Rose tells Lissa that they can stay if she stays away from the royals. And Lissa insists that she needs to take Andre's place in the royal circle, and Rose very harshly reminds her that Andre is dead. We finally get some information about the royals through Rose's narration as she explains that there are 12 royal families, and then Dimitri finds them and tells Rose that she's late for practice. On the way to practice, Rose gets sucked into Lissa's head when she feels a strong emotion, which has to be real weird for Dimitri, who's just watching this happen. Rose, as Lissa, meets Christian Ozera in a church attic. Rose's thoughts give us some insight on Strigoi and fill us in that Christian's parents willingly killed someone while feeding to make the change. What are your immediate thoughts on this chapter?
So my immediate question is, do you think the feeders are the quote-unquote blood whores?
I always thought that because Rose is a dhampir and she thinks that Kurova is threatening to send her to be a blood whore, I always thought that the blood whores were dhampirs that let Moroi feed off of them.
So essentially a feeder, because she said it could be anyone.
I'm honestly not sure. I think that the blood whores that the Moroi and the dhampirs look down on as blood whores specifically are probably dhampirs that let Moroi drink from them, and then the feeders are humans that were addicts in their human life and then basically give up their life of addiction or living on the streets or whatever to be more comfortable in the Moroi society, because I'm sure that the Moroi treat them very well, give them like a nice place to live, probably give them,
Yeah, they did say they have a good, comfortable life.
yeah, so I'm sure that they're just leaving behind their past of addiction for like a brighter future of addiction. The first thing that I wrote down in my notes about this chapter is that Rose is disgusted by the feeders because they're addicts, but she also seems a little jealous when she sees Lissa drinking from them. And so I was wondering if it was the stigma of a blood whore and the view that society has that makes her think that Moroi drinking from her is bad, because she obviously craves it. And I know it's looked down on as like some weird kinky experience, but honestly, if she enjoys it that much, like every once in a while, like you might as well.
That was my first point too. I think that she's definitely low key addicted to it, and since it has that big of a stigma around it, like you said, she's like withholding from it. I don't really see why it would be that big of a deal. I mean, I do think it's kind of messed up that the Moroi still look down on the feeders and everything, because like if it weren't for the feeders, like you guys wouldn't really be doing all that well.
That's actually the second note that I took, that the Morois look down on the dependency that the feeders feel for the bites, even though they have the same dependency to the feeders.
Yeah, it's very hypocritical, which I'm pretty sure she states in the book, but I thought that was kind of weird. And I also think it's weird that the Moroi also have to eat normal food. So are they like not full vampires since they're not Strigoi? Do you think they're like some kind of hybrid?
So I think that the Moroi are what we would think of as regular vampires, but every vampire book obviously has a different narrative of what their regular vampires are. So I feel like the Moroi are vampires, but they're like more humanized than the vampires that we're used to in vampire books. And then the Strigoi are like vampires that go bad.
I also thought it was really interesting that they brought in a magic element to it in this chapter. I mean, clearly it was going to have it at some point, but it's actually kind of cool that the Moroi all have some kind of magical element. Since Lissa hasn't specialized yet, do you think it has something to do with the bond?
I do think it has something to do with the bond. To be completely honest with you, while I was reading this chapter, I had a weird flashback from 10 years ago, and I remembered a little bit about what happens in this book. And I definitely do think it has something to do with the bond. I think that you're spot on with that. I'm not going to say too much because you've never read it, and I suddenly remembered a couple of things. But I do want to know, if you were Moroi, what power would you want to specialize in?
Didn't they say it was like only like earth, fire? What is it? Man, I watched Avatar.
The specialties are earth, water, fire, or air.
Earth, fire, air. Oh my gosh. Why was I thinking there's like five more? No, I thought there was at least five. Like I was sitting here and I was like, what else makes up the universe? I think water would be pretty cool because you can pull it out of literally anywhere.
I think that I would choose fire because it seems the most useful, honestly. But I really wanted to say something while you were talking about how those were the only powers, but I can't because you haven't read the book and I suddenly remember things and it's really frustrating. So I'm going to have to really try to not spoil everything for you.
I mean, I'm already picking up on the vibes that there's definitely more to it than that because you said it. I'm spot on with the bond thing. So I was already kind of picking up that there's probably more. And I mean, the school kind of dictates what they all get to know and don't know. So it could just be like, I can see there being more that meets the eye right now that they don't know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely, there's definitely more than we are being told about. What do you think about Rose comparing Lissa to Miss Carp? I know that we don't get a lot of information about Miss Carp, but Miss Carp was always afraid that someone was watching her and following her. And we finally get at least a little bit of insight as to why Lissa is so scared when she reveals that she hasn't felt anybody following her lately. That makes me think that that's why they left, is because someone was following her.
I am so happy that you brought that up because I have like two whole bullet points. So before I even read Miss Carp's name, I put who is following slash watching them. Is that why they left? And then Miss Carp would always apparently just like slink on by them and be like, you never know who's watching and shut all the blinds and whatnot. So I feel like she's actually going to play a bigger role because maybe she knows what's going on, but she doesn't want Lissa to get hurt.
Yeah, I definitely think that you're right about that. I mean, I read this book 10 years ago. I know that Miss Carp plays a role, but I don't think it's a very big one, to be completely honest with you. And I don't think that that's giving anything away by telling you that. But my next note that I made is, if a Moroi offered to bite you, would you be down?
10 out of 10. Man, with my past, hell yeah, 10 out of 10.
Honestly, why not? I don't understand. Like, I get that it's like sexualized and it's a stigma because, like, these books came out, what, 12 years ago? It's probably closer to 15 years ago now. And back then, it really wasn't, people weren't as open with their sexuality. And so I understand people stigmatizing it and looking down on people that want to be bitten. But honestly, like, it sounds great. Like, I would absolutely be down.
I mean, I'm always down to try something at least once, as long as I like don't die. But I mean, I feel like a lot of people would be trying it though, because like it's quote unquote natural, like cannabis.
I wonder if the Strigoi bite also releases endorphins and gets you high, or if it's just the Moroi.
I would definitely think it's probably still euphoric because I feel like it'd have to be more welcoming, but I could definitely see why it wouldn't be because I mean they're just gonna kill them.
I wonder if all Strigoi kill every person that they feed off of, or if it's like sometimes they change people, or sometimes they let them go. And like, can Strigoi compel people?
Well, it says they lose all kind of magic, like elemental magic, once they turn, so I doubt it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm really glad that we got some insight on the difference between Moroi and Strigoi this chapter. I really liked the introduction of Christian, even though we saw it through a third party of Rose as Lissa, which was a little trippy. I'm going to have to get used to listening to Rose narrate as herself, but also as Lissa at the same time.
I really like that Richelle Mead did that. I thought that was so unique, but she does it so well, it's not even confusing. Back to the Strigoi and Moroi thing, I think it's kind of cool that they can still go in the sun a little, but then if you're Strigoi, you're like the basic vampire, you'll burn if you go in the sun.
Yeah, I think that that's going to become useful for them later when things start heating up. I feel like they're probably going to end up in a situation at some point where they have to go out in the sun and Lissa has to be uncomfortable in the sun because it's what's going to save her from a Strigoi. I feel like that's probably going to happen multiple times.
How did it make you feel finding out that the Royals are actually very shitty people? I feel like the Royals actually might have some part into playing with trying to get rid of Lissa, maybe because like she's the princess and once her family's eliminated, one of them get to take over, like take the title. But I thought it was really nice, not nice because it's kind of sad to get a background like onto how Lissa got so fragile and weak. She had a big heart and they kept making fun of her or taking advantage of her. So what was your thoughts on that? I feel like that was a pretty big part.
So, as I was reading this chapter and having flashbacks to my fantastic time in the 8th grade, I remembered some things about how Lissa got so fragile, and I can't share them with you quite yet. I do think that somebody is trying to end Lissa's bloodline, but I don't think it's all of the royals as a whole. I think that it's like specific groups and maybe not even royals. I think that
Are Dhampirs trying to take over and change the way it works?
no, I don't think so, at least not in this book. I don't think that that's correct. But I did want to say how the Moroi, especially the Royal Moroi, they almost treat the Dhampirs as if they are like livestock. Like they use them as a product. They use them as staff basically, but they're obligated to do this. It's not really like they have a choice. I mean, if they don't do it, they're labeled as a blood whore and that's bad.
Could definitely see how a Dhampir would still want to kill her like that, but why specifically her? Because it doesn't seem like she's the type to treat people badly, despite her standing. All right, well, I'm going to go in with another point while she does this. In this chapter, we find out that Rose is a hottie with a body. Yeah, she's yelling in the background. Apparently, since she's half Dhampir and half Moroi, she doesn't have apparently most Moroi are like super skinny supermodels that you see on the runway, but Rose has like developed hips and boobies, so like the men, like the royals and just the Moroi men all kind of lust after her because she's like quote unquote exotic and sexy. I thought that was cool. You get a little more insight onto what she looks like and how she thinks about herself. She said she kind of got used to it and didn't really think about what she looked like anymore since they were in the real world for so long. But you see, Rose has some game. Rose has some game in this chapter.
I actually have something to add about that. I didn't even write this down, but as you were talking, I thought about it. In the book, Rose specifically mentions that a lot of Moroi men view dhampirs as something they want to try at least once. And that really irked me the wrong way. I did not like that. I do not like that yes, she's hot. Yes, she's got the boobs. And Moroi women apparently are like stick thin supermodel type badass bitches. And Rose is like curvy and thick with three C's apparently. But
I think if you think about it this way, they all want to try it, quote unquote, at least once. So what's the difference between that and then the dhampirs maybe wanting to experience the bite at least once? The hypocrisy is never ending. The audacity.
I agree. I think that both races are being hypocritical in the sense where the Moroi men want to sleep with dhampirs, but they would never date a dhampir because it's socially not accepted. And the dhampir women want to experience a vampire bite high because it sounds fantastic, but they would never do it because it just sounds, kinky, it's stigmatized. There's just so much behind it. It'd be like social suicide.
Is her uncle trying to kill her? Is her uncle in on this? I'm sorry, that's so random. But now that I'm thinking about it, what does he turn Strigoi later on? Because he's dying right now.
From what I remember about the first book, I can guarantee you that Victor Dashkov does not become
Okay,
Strigoi.
but is he still in on the nasty details?
I there's a lot that I could say probably without giving anything away, but I feel like it's more fun to just listen to your theories.
But we're good at guessing things, so I feel like I like that you're not answering some things. What do you think about Dollface being Mia? That's the last thing before we could wrap it up. I think that she definitely has a big role to play in this, possibly part of why Liz is so scared, because it did say that Mia got really, really popular really fast. Like she was a nobody before Lissa and Rose disappeared, and now she kind of has it out for them that they've returned.
Do you think that Mia is like the bad guy of this book, or do you think it's somebody else? That's what I want to know right now.
Man, I haven't really picked up on that yet. I want to lean towards she's like a supporting bad guy, but I'm not sure that she's the bad guy.
I think that she is an over jealous girlfriend, but that's to be expected when you're she's like 16. They said that she's a year younger than Rose, and Rose is, I believe, a senior, so she's got to be 16 or 17. So I think that Mia's probably just a overjealous girlfriend. But I honestly don't remember Mia being a big part of the series, to be completely honest. Granted, I read the first book 10 years ago, so I could be completely wrong. But I don't remember her really doing that much. I think that there's a couple altercations with her, but I don't think she becomes a big character.
I mean, her last name kind of sounds like some sinister shit. Have you ever seen or like watched or read a book, Rinaldi? That always comes with some bad things. Rinaldi's gold came from blood money. Like,
Okay, can I tell you the first thing I thought of when I read her name?
yeah.
I thought of Mia Thermopolis from what's that movie called? The one where, oh my God, what's her name? Is it Anne Hathaway? Yeah, Princess Diaries. That's the first thing I thought of. I know that the last name is different. I think something's different.
What do you.
What's Anne Hathaway's name in Princess Diaries?
Mia Thermopolis, full name. 1 second.
Okay, Mia
Amelia
Thermopolis.
Amelia Mignodet Thermopolis Rinaldi.
Yeah, so that's the first thing I thought of. That's the first thing. That's the first thing I thought of when I read her name. I was like, Princess Diaries, Anne Hathaway. Absolutely. Is that the right actor?
Yeah.
Anne Hathaway? Yeah. Okay. So that's the first thing I thought of. I did not think about anything bad at all. I was like, ooh.
I always think of like some spooky French person with a pointy nose and a top hat and a cigar sneaking around in the shadows, all in black and white, clearly.
Wait, I have a question. Well, it's not really a question. It's more of an observation.
Yeah.
I wrote down as my next note, I just know that I would hate Natalie. And I want to know your opinion about Natalie. I think that Natalie seems like a sweetheart. but she talks too much and she's far too perky and she asks far too many questions and she seems like the annoying little sister. She reminds me, oh my god, Abby's gonna hate me. She reminds me of
She
Abby.
reminds me of Abby when she was younger. Abby, I love you. You definitely grew into such a beautiful, young, not annoying woman. But you would be flying into my room, hopping on Ashley, just smothering her, asking questions. But no, I definitely think Natalie, I think she's definitely using that to her advantage. She knows she's annoying. She knows she can get away with it because people will just roll their eyes and be like, fucking Natalie, shut the fuck up. But really, she's just like collecting information. Like, I think she saw straight through the lie that she gave about Lissa feeding. I think she saw straight through it. And by seeing straight through it, she got what she needed. Now she looks down on Rose even more.
What do you think Natalie's role is going to play in this book?
Well, I think since they're halfway cousins or whatever, I mean, I guess she would be next in line.
Oh, that's actually interesting. I didn't think about that. Oh, that makes a lot of sense because Victor Dashkov was supposed to be next in line, but he got sick, so he couldn't be king. So that actually makes a lot of sense. I didn't even think about
I
that.
just thought about that right now because the wine's kind of tickling my brain.
For anybody who's listening and doesn't, that's Crystal's little sister. Crystal and I have been friends for 12, going on 13 years. And when we were little, her sister would always run into the room and just annoy the crap out of us. And Abby, I love you so much. You're a wonderful human now. But 12 years ago, you got on my nerves a little bit. And Natalie reminds me of that.
We had to barricade ourselves in my fucking closet. So Abby and I would share a room, and like, she was little though. She had toys and friends to go play with. But it got to the point to where Ashley and I would barricade ourselves into my closet just to like. And we were also just some weird kids ourselves, but like, I guess saying that out loud, it's like, what was the purpose? Why don't we go outside?
Abby, we love you. I hope that you take this all in good grace. I'm sure you will because you have a great sense of humor. Anyway, my next point. My next point was that Moroi can stand sunlight, Strigoi cannot. We covered this a little bit, but I feel like it's going to be a big plot point later. The one after that is Moroi are mortal and they're born vampires, but Strigoi are made. And we learned this through Rose as Lissa meeting Christian Ozera and revealing that Christian Ozera's parents became Strigoi by choice. And her specifying that it was by choice makes me think that some vampires, some Moroi, become Strigoi not by choice. So they're like, I don't know if they get bitten or I don't know how the process works, but some are by choice and some are forced.
I'm going to rewind this for 1 second because you kind of flew by it. But if you think about it, if you were just a really sneaky person, all you'd have to do is kidnap a Strigoi and like chain them down in the desert in the daytime. Like, I feel like that could be a business hitman for Strigoi. Like, literally, it's just a mass kidnapping, and you just put them all in the sun, chained together.
How? I mean, okay, are you saying that so that you can become a Strigoi, or are you trying to kill them in this imaginary
Trying to
situation?
commit mass homicide of the Strigoi.
Okay. Yeah, I think that that would actually work, but how on earth are you going to chain up that many Strigoi if they have like immortal forces? Like if Rose beating up her highly trained classmates isn't enough to fight a Strigoi, how on earth are you going to chain up some
Just
Strigoi?
like send them invitations to a party in the desert and be like, there's gonna be so many hot dhampirs here just ready to be turned. There will be plenty of shade, I promise. And then once they all get there, they just take away all the shade because they're gonna be miles and miles and miles away from any fucking shade.
Are you out there with an axe cutting down trees? What is happening?
If you're in the desert, they don't have trees.
Where's the shade?
And that's what I'm saying. We would bring so like those canopies you have for weddings. We would just have so many of those, and then they'd get there and they'd be like, yeah, and then we just rip them down and run.
Okay, yeah, no, I like that. I think that that's a good idea. I don't know why. I don't know why the Moroi haven't employed that tactic there. That's a really good tactic for survival and killing
I feel like
Strigoi.
you could take care of the whole situation in one go.
I think you just ended the book on chapter 4, honestly. Do you have any other notes on chapter 4 before we ramble for too long?
Nope, I think we're winding down. The whole point of this was to have fun and revisit our youth, but through adult eyes and
Well, I think
impaired
we've certainly
minds.
done that. Let's wrap up chapter 4 and start reading chapter 5. Hey, it's future Ashley from editing. I just wanted to pop in and let you guys know that I'll be posting new episodes of this podcast on Tuesdays from now on. This episode was so much fun to edit, and it just gets more unhinged as the night progressed. We read chapter 5 of Vampire Academy, and we got some answers to some questions, and we both came up with a couple theories. So let's get into that. It starts out with Christian's parents being Strigoi. They died or they were killed, whatever happened, but it kind of left a stigma on Christian where no one really wants to hang out with him at all. And in the attic, he asked Lissa questions about being gone for 2 years, and he asked what the real world is actually like. And he doesn't buy the story that she and Rose told everybody where they were feeding on humans, because apparently humans don't really like when vampires take their blood. Shocker. And he thinks that Lissa got her blood fix from Rose. And I mean, he's right, but it kind of looks bad. And then Lissa begs Christian not to tell anyone, and he promises that he won't. He warms the air with his fire specialty, which I thought was kind of cool. And then Rose kind of snaps back into her own brain back in the training gym, and Dimitri is asking Rose what's going on. Why is she blanking out all of a sudden? He's really confused, understandably so. She confesses that she was in Lissa's head, but assures him that her friend isn't in any real danger. Dimitri was really concerned for a second, and then he makes her lift a bunch of weights, and she asks him how he ended up being Lissa's guardian. He said that he used to be a guardian to the Zeklos, I believe, Lord, but he was killed while Dimitri was away. And even though it wasn't his fault because he wasn't there and everybody needs time off, he still blames himself. And the guardian who was protecting this guy just wasn't strong enough. Rose feels bad for Dimitri, so she compliments him on his plan of attack of bringing her and Lissa in. It worked way better than the Psyhounds that they sent last time, but Dimitri's really confused because they never sent the Psyhounds, and he has no idea what Rose is talking about. So, like, who sent the Psyhounds? And then training is done for the day. Rose heads back to her dorm, and then Novi's section of the school. It's all light and airy, and she describes the Moroi dorms as being dark, and so that light doesn't get in. She checks her email and has one from her mom saying that she shouldn't have run away, and that's pretty much all that it says. When Rose wakes up the next morning, she's sore from all the training. She catches up with Lissa, who is mad that she was in her head again, but Rose can't help it, and it just kind of happens. And then Rose thinks about how Lissa and Christian hanging out is probably a bad idea because his parents were Strigoi, but Lissa brushes it off because she thinks that Rose is overreacting, which she kind of is because Christian wasn't the Strigoi. And then in class, Jessie is laughing about a time that Rose put a hermit crab and a gerbil together for a fight, which sounds so not humane. And their teacher at the time, Miss Carp, freaked out. She was nutty anyway, though, and always thought that people were following her and wandering around her at campus. And then Rose remembers running into Miss Carp one time at night when she was sneaking out through a window, and she slipped and fell from the second floor and hurt her hands. And she thought that Miss Carp was going to send her to the headmistress right away, but instead Miss Carp puts her hands on her and like does some voodoo magic on all of her wounds heal. And Moroi can do some magic, but that's pretty weird, and Rose had never seen that before. And as Rose was turning to go back to her room, she notices scars on Miss Carp's face. And I think that wraps up chapter 5. I feel like we got a lot of information without letting us know that we got a lot of information. There was a lot of hidden gems in this chapter.
All right, so I'm going to start off with they made it very apparent that Christian's parents were Strogoys, and then they went in and added that they were gunned down by guardians and he possibly witnessed it. Do you think that all Strogoys are bad, or do you think some of them have some kind of moral compass? Like, there are feeders that are willing to be fed on every day. What about those that are willing to die? And the Strigoi, once they do it that one time, they could still be good and immortal. What do you think?
I'm sure that there are always like an exception to every rule, but I think that as a rule, Strigoi are just bad. I feel like they are probably the main villain of this entire series. They definitely are out to destroy the Moroi and Dhampirs. I feel like they have a bad agenda, but I would not be surprised if at some point there is a Strigoi or two that are like on a path to find some way to make their situation habitable. Like they're looking, like if you look at Edward Cullen in the Twilight series, he when he would feed on humans, he would only feed on like the worst humans possible. Like he was looking for rapists and like pedophiles and like the worst kind of people, the people that were going to be killing humans. So I would not be surprised if there were some Strigoi that do that, but I don't think it's common. I think that most Strigoi are probably inherently evil.
Yeah, I can see that.
What was your first impression of Christian? Because he's described as kind of like dark and mysterious with like a dark past, and he really just seems like my type of guy. I love his wit and his sarcasm at the beginning of the chapter, and he seemed really curious about life outside of the academy. So I wonder if he's also like a ward of the state since his parents were killed like Lissa's. And Rose doesn't seem to trust him at all, but what are your thoughts?
I think he just is an aloof, goofy guy who got the shit hand, I guess, because when he was kind of bantering, not bantering, but like kind of pestering right when she first saw him, it didn't really come off asshole-ish to me. It came off he was probing to see how she would react. Once he got comfortable, he kind of opened up more. I don't think he's a bad character. My first impressions were to give him a chance because like you said, he does seem kind of like your type. Yeah, I know I like Christian actually right here. I earlier before I saw the little banter, I was like Christian is totes into Alyssa, but then I deleted it and then I said Lisa said or Alyssa says she doesn't like him, but she's totes into him. Like I think there's definitely something going on there.
No, I feel like they were definitely flirting without actually flirting. Like there was kind of like an edge to their conversation. It definitely makes me think that something more is going to happen. Do you think that Christian is going to tell people that
I
Lissa was feeding from Rose
absolutely
while they were in the outside
cannot
world?
see how he would tell anybody with how they really made it apparent that nobody treats him like nobody treats Christian with respect or like anything because his parents were Strigoi, which is also leading me to believe that the stigma against Strigoi are going to become bigger because nobody talks to him because his parents chose to do that, even though he's his own person. But it is high school technically, so like mom mentality, but I don't know.
I feel like the Strigoi are seen as just evil incarnate. Like the Moroi have to take the life of somebody else to become Strigoi unless they're changed by force. And so I really think that the Strigoi don't really have any good qualities about them. I think that they are just the worst of the worst. I don't think that they have any moral compass. I think that they are selfish beings and they only care about what is going to make them stronger.
I just think the Strigoi are the bad boys. I'm gonna move it along to the next point. How did you feel about seeing Lissa stand up for herself for once? And Rose said that it was her old spark, which leads me to believe Lissa, before the trauma, was a bad bitch who took no shit.
Well, it was mentioned before that Lissa and Rose were pretty popular. And so to be popular in any high school, whether it's vampires or humans, you've got to have at least some sort of something about you. She obviously had some sort of attitude or spark or something that made people not want to fuck with her. And so
I don't. I'm gonna interrupt again. I'm sorry. I don't think so because that's it. It's they say that's what broke her in the end was everybody taking advantage of her being so sweet and kind, and maybe that's why she was so popular
it
before.
makes me think of where Rose in the last chapter in chapter 4 where Rose told Lissa that she needed to stay away from the royals if they were going to stay at school because the royals seem like a very toxic group of people and Lissa tries to insist that she needs to take Andre's place. I'm assuming that Andre is her older brother, therefore the next in line for their family name. And so she's trying to take his place because being royal has to have a lot of politics involved. And politics have been mentioned very lightly in this book, but I feel like there's a lot of politics involved with that. And I feel like Lissa being too involved with that probably hurts her mental health more than anything.
I agree with that. They do confirm that that is her older brother, and I think part of what puts her in danger is, and I think Rose subconsciously knows this, is the fact that Lissa wants to play into the politics, because why else would they try and kill her and her family unless somebody didn't agree with their side in the way something's going? I don't know how to really to word that, but I'm sure
I
you
have a
get it.
question. Have you figured out any theories as to what the danger was at the school?
I mean, not really. I just feel like it was somebody who really wanted to end Lissa's bloodline.
Okay, can I give you a couple of trains of thought and hear what you have to think about them?
I would love that.
Okay, so Ms. Carp is described as constantly paranoid and always thinking that someone is watching her. Miss Carp is not described as royal, I don't think, at any point. And then Lissa reveals at one point in the last chapter, I believe, that she hasn't felt anybody watching her. And Rose has a moment where she is nervous to think about Lissa acting like Ms. Carp because Ms. Carp was crazy, I suppose. And then in chapter 5, Jesse is asking Rose about something that happened in Ms. Carp's class. And Jesse's like, oh, like she was crazy. And Rose has a moment of a flashback and talks about Miss Carp healing her hands.
That is actually that is my last point in the notes. In all capitals it says, "She healed Rose's hands after she fell from the second floor." What? I feel like that Miss Carp, not I don't think she was necessarily a royal, but I think she was definitely somewhat of a higher class. And once they found out that she had that ability, like something other than the elements, she was kind of an outcast. And like the only way somebody would be able to figure that out is if they were quote unquote lurking in the shadows, like they are watching Rose and Lissa.
So, what do you think the comparison of Miss Carp and Lissa is? Do you have any ideas of what would be connecting them, or do you think that they're completely different instances that will have some sort of parallel later?
No, so the fact that Miss Carp is able to heal Rose and the fact that Lissa is able to have that bond, I think that's going to go a lot deeper. They both have abilities outside of the accepted spectrum.
Yeah, no, I think that you're definitely on the right track. Again, as I was reading this chapter, I had flashbacks from 10 years ago, remembering some things. I still do not remember the main climax of this story, I suppose, but I definitely did remember a couple of details, and I think that you are on the right track. The next note that I made was that when Christian and Lissa are sitting in the church attic, Lissa is kind of describing the academy and she's describing life outside of the academy. And she says, it was really great. No one knew who I was. I was just another face, not Maroy, not royal, not anything. And so I wonder if Lissa really just wants to not even deal with being royal. Like when Rose was telling her to stay away from the politics of the royals, she seemed to be very adamant about staying in the royal circle, but is that just because she wants to fulfill her family legacy, or does she really just hate being a royal and she wants to do her own thing?
I think it all leads back to she thought she had so much more time just being herself. She never saw her dad being killed, her mom being killed, or her brother. If you think about it, that's a lifetime of people almost. Like she never would have had been in the position to be like the head of the family. So I think she kind of resents the fact, but also I feel like she's very loyal to her bloodline. So she's going to do her best to fulfill what they couldn't because their lives were cut short. So I feel like she's doing it more out of obligation and she wants to do it the best she can, but I also feel like they're not really sure what the danger is. So she's going along with Rose's request because she's kind of weary.
Okay, now as you're talking, you're giving me more ideas of questions to ask you. Do you think that Lissa's parallel to Miss Carp has anything to do with the danger that is at the school? Do you think that it's the same danger that Miss Carp was feeling? Oh my god, there's a spider. Oh my god. It's right fucking there. Do you see it? Do you not fucking see that? No, 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 no. don't want to see it. That was the scariest moment of my life.
I never got up so fast. Usually I try and save the babies, but he was coming for you.
Can you tell who kills the bugs in this house? I 100% forget what I was talking about, and I apologize so much, but I'm going to just move on to the next bullet point that I made here. The next bullet point that I made was that we see Dimitri get a little soft for a second when Rose is sucked back to reality after being in Lissa's head. And Rose says that he looked truly concerned, and it makes her feel a little goofy. I think that this is the first instance of her having feelings for Dimitri, and Dimitri reveals a somewhat dark past, and we also see a little bit of amusement from him, which breaks the god facade that he had going on before.
He attended school in Siberia, and then he was sent here because they needed extra help on campus. But that makes me believe it feels like they specially requested him for some reason.
Well, I gathered from his background story that he gave Rose, the Moroi that he was guarding was killed while he was on break or not on duty, I suppose. He wasn't there at the time, and his partner guardian.
Yeah, it was like his vacation.
Yeah, his partner guardian was watching over his Moroi while he wasn't there, and his Moroi was killed. And so I think that that's why he got sent to the academy. I don't think that he was sent there as like a punishment because he technically wasn't on duty, but I think he was sent there to basically find Lissa.
Yeah, so I highlighted looking at Dimitri now, I had a feeling he might very well turn into one of those, speaking as he devotes his whole life to the academy. There's no vacations or anything. And I think after his boss or once he died when it wasn't his shift, I think that's when he realized he really can't have any time off, and that's why he devotes his time. And I think that's why he takes everything about Lissa so seriously right now.
Yeah, I think that he is so devoted to the job. And again, that's probably why he took such an immediate interest in Rose, is because Rose was also so devoted to being Lissa's guardian. So if Dimitri is bound to be Lissa's guardian and Rose has a bond with her, it's a very apparent choice that Rose would also be her second guardian. And he probably wants to train her and get her up to par so that he doesn't have to fuck around with some girl that never really finished her training because she ran off with the princess for 2 years. And that's probably why he was so intent on giving her extra lessons and everything. But also, is this the first time that you kind of see them flirting, or is that just a one-sided thing on Rose's end? Do you think that Dimitri feels a little goofy as well, or is that just a Rose thing that's happening?
I think Rose took it in a flirty way up until we realized the school had nothing to do with the Psyhounds. I think that's when his interest. I think he was like somewhat interested in her before, after like seeing they had the bond and everything, and how she tried everything to protect her. But I think once he heard that Psyhounds went after her, I think he felt himself become more protective and kind of like, we didn't send those. What do you mean? But then she cut it off because I think she thinks he's naive.
Who do you think sent the Psyhounds?
Whoever wants her bloodline to end.
I remember some things, and I'm trying to not spoil anything for you while still prompt you.
Did Kurova send him? Like, was it her little secret duty? Or, like, was it somebody on the team of the academy? They didn't want the academy to know, so they went and did it for themselves?
So my thought process was
Was it the uncle?
my thought process here was why would the school send Psyhounds if they're trying to get the girls back to the school, and back to safety? Why would they send Psyhounds? Because the Psyhounds are described as having a pack mentality, ready to attack and ready to destroy whatever they're set to attack. So why would the school...
You're just making me further believe that the uncle had something to do with it, because if that bloodline end, no matter what. Oh, I guess he was the first in succession, though, so. I don't know. Somebody wanted them dead. It was not the academy, but it was either Mia or the uncle. That's my guess right now. That's as far as I can get.
What do you think about Lissa not specializing?
I think it has something to do with the bond, and I definitely think it has something to do. The fact that she was able to heal Rose, I just feel like everybody wants to keep it a secret that Alyssa has this bond with Rose, because it leads to a more supernatural power than the ones that are more common.
When Rose is stuck in Lissa's head, do you think that Dimitri seems concerned because of Rose being stuck in her head and she seems a little fucky? Or do you think that he is concerned because she was stuck in Lissa's head and Lissa could possibly be in trouble?
So I never even thought about the latter, but I did have a bullet point that said Dimitri's concerned for Rose after she froze while in Lissa's head. Aw. So I took it more of a she froze in the middle of whatever they were doing, and he was like, "Oh my god, are you okay?" But I didn't really think about that because he does know about the bond, and he probably just guessed that she was in Lissa's head.
I don't think that he knew that she could get into her head though, because when Rose snaps back to her own head, Dimitri is like, "What the fuck happened? Like, are you okay?" And she was like, "Yeah, I was in Lissa's head." And then she states, "I didn't feel like elaborating." And so she just kind of moves past it.
Yeah, but that still leads me to believe he already knew about the bond prior, not like between them, but he knew about the ancient civilizations, which means he probably knows this is not the first time that has happened. So when she said it, he probably wanted to verify, but picked up on the fact she didn't want to follow up with
The
it.
next bullet point that I made was Rose's mom sends her an email that only says, "Glad you're back. What you did was inexcusable." And Rose has been missing for 2 years, and that's all she gets. So, again, who is looking out for Rose? Because she's always taking care of Lissa, and nobody seems to be
I
taking
feel
care of
like
her.
the dhampir have always been looked down upon, so she knew what to expect. But I almost feel like there's a part of Rose that wishes her mom understood, but I still getting the vibes they can't really tell anybody why they felt like they were scared enough to leave. Like, how bad would it have to be to make them
The
leave?
next bullet point that I made says that Lissa says that she isn't into Christian, but it's totally a lie.
She is definitely into Christian. I think she kind of likes the mystery. I think she kind of likes the allure, but I also think she's picking up on the fact that maybe his parents weren't all that bad. Maybe, I don't know. He's different from them. She understands that, and it's just kind of like you root for the underdog. That's her underdog. I don't know.
I mean, part of me can understand the draw of immortality from Christian's parents became Strigoi to become immortal, to live forever, and part of me can understand that. But also, I feel like Christian at this point is just the underdog of the school. And so now Lissa and Rose are coming back, and everybody's pointing, everybody's whispering, everybody's staring. And so maybe he kind of feels like there's another underdog around, and he feels like it's somebody that he could possibly relate to. Because Rose mentions in the chapter that nobody really pays attention to Christian. Nobody really gives him a second thought. He kind of fades into the background. He goes to church to try to prove that he's not Strigoi, I believe. And maybe he is finally looking for somebody that he can connect with since most people ignore him in their society.
I think maybe he picked up on the fact that she wasn't like the Royals a long time ago if he has always been there. I feel like he kind of knows more like Miss Carp, so he's kind of like easing his way into being a supporting character.
So Rose mentions in the book to not go after Christian Ozera, and that if she's looking for a man to go back after Aaron and try to break up him and Mia, do you think that she's going to go after Aaron, or do you think that she's going to try to go after Christian?
It was already mentioned earlier she was never that into Aaron. I think they said it was all for looks. But with her longing to go in Andre's footsteps, I can see her going back to Aaron, but I just don't really see that happening. I mean, whether she gets with Christian or not, I don't think Aaron will be the royal she gets with.
Do you think that anything's going to happen with Jesse, because he's appeared twice now in 2 chapters, and Rose describes him as really hot, really attractive, and they have a very flirty friendship. Do you think that they're going to do anything?
He is definitely an inside man. He seems like he knows he's attractive. He can be coy. He can probe for questions. Just like we think Natalie's just sucking up all the information she can in the most innocent way.
I don't have any more notes for this chapter. Do you have any more notes for chapter 5?
Nah.
All right, well, then let's just wrap it up. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It really would help us out. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok by searching Boozy Bookshelf, and you can find me on Twitter at Truly Tripping. Thanks so much for listening.